Okay, welcome grade 10s to the lesson of activity 8.7. This was your homework, or your homework was that you had to open up the accounts in the general ledger with their opening balances. Now I have done so in my workbook. I have started with the capital account and the opening balance on the credit side, 52,000 Rand. Where did I find this information? This was as per the trial balance of activity 8.7, and it said it was balances on the 31st of October 2018. Now those were closing balances. So then obviously what I closed off in the previous month is what I'm going to start with in this month. So now those closing balances become the opening balances for this activity. The equipment, I started with the balance, the 1st of November 2018, balance brought down 45,000 Rand, and so I continued. And these are all the balances as per the trial balance. Now what I've done is I have made a summary of all the information they gave you. It says their information for the subsidiary journals, and then it was given in a different format, a format that we are not really familiar with. So all I did is I created a cash receipts journal, total columns, and I put the information into those total columns, so it makes a little bit more sense when we post to the general ledger. For example, the information they give me with the cash receipts journal, it says total of deposit slips for November was 45,000 Rand. That is then my bank total. Sales was 24,000 Rand for the month, and then they tell me the markup on sales was 50%. So I had to go and calculate the cost of sales, which is then 16,000 Rand. I just want to quickly stand still with debtors control. They told me that monies received from debtors was 2,890 Rand. And then we allowed discounts of 110 Rand. So the amount that I'm going to put in my debtors control column is both the amounts that we received from debtors, as well as the discount that we allowed. And that in total is then 3,000 Rand. I'm going to repeat because I made a lot of mistakes. Monies received from debtors, 2,890. Discount allowed to debtors, 110. And the amount that I have allowed plus the amount that I have received from debtors will go to my debtors control column, because this would be the amount that I have to subtract from their outstanding debt. And it's going to go to the credit side of my debtors control account, but we'll get there, etc. Okay, then in the sundry columns, I have two transactions. One was for capital, 15,610 on the 1st of November, and the other one was for rent income, 2,500 on the 15th of November. I'm not going to talk a lot more about this, digress too much on this. You have this, it was attached to your lesson. You can go check there. If there's something that you still don't understand and it doesn't become clear when we do this activity, you are welcome to send me a message. Okay, so I'm going to put this aside. And quickly just look at this again. I have opened all the accounts with their opening balances. Okay, there it is available. Now, if we want to post these journals to the general ledger, it is important that I remember the rules for posting. Now, in grade 9, you were taught that if I want to post the cash receipts journal, the rule would be debit, bank, credit, all other accounts, except for cost of sales. Cost of sales will also be debited, and trading stock would be credited. That would be the contra entry for the cost of sales. Okay, but now we have another exception to that rule, because we know that discount allowed is actually an expense, and we know expenses have debit entries. So this is also going to be debited. Discount allowed will also then be debited, discount allowed. Okay, so that is the rule for posting the cash receipts journal to the general ledger. I'm going to put this aside, and then I'm going to do the posting. Now, before I put it aside, I like to work in a systematic order. I like to start on the left-hand side and then continue as I go along, so that I can tick off every column that was posted. It just makes sure that I don't forget anything. Okay, so I'm going to start. The first thing that I have to do is, the rule says debit bank, so I'm going to go to my bank account, and on the debit side on the 30th, I will write in the amount of bank the bank column total, 45,000 Rand. It comes from my CRJ, and I must know that this is total receipts. Total receipts. Okay, so I've done the debit part of that. Now I have to credit, and the next column I have is for sales. So sales on the 30th, I will then credit, and the contra entry is going to be bank. CRJ is the journal where it was posted initially, and the amount was 24,000 Rand. Okay, so I've done bank, I've done sales. Cost of sales, now I know, is not going to be credited because that's part of the exception of the rule. It's going to be debited. So I go to the cost of sales account, and on the debit side, I will write 30th of November. The contra entry is now not going to be bank, but it's going to be trading stock. So I will write trading stock. And important to write the folios, CRJ, and the amount is 16,000 Rand. Okay, so now I have done, let's quickly just look at this again, this paper. I have done bank, I have done sales, I have done cost of sales. Next part is debtors control. Now the rule, let's just quickly look at that again, says debit bank and cost of sales and discount allowed and credit all other accounts and trading stocks. So I know that debtors control will be credited. So on the credit side, on the 30th of November 2018, I will write bank, but now bank is not the only contra entry I have, because the amount that I took is both the receipts from the debtors as well as the discount that I allowed. So it's both the amount that I put into my bank account plus the discount that I allowed. That is going to make up this amount, the 3,000 Rand. And this was entered into the CRJ. Okay, so I'm done with the debtors control. I can tick that off. Discount allowed is going to be on the debit side, because that's one of the exceptions to my rule. Let me just quickly find it. It was 110 Rand. So on the 30th of November, I am going to write CRJ. I'm going to come back to that quickly. It was 110 Rand. Now, bank is not my contra entry. My contra entry in this case is debtors control, because that's the name of the account that was credited. Okay, so debtors control is my contra entry in this case. Now I'm done with that part. Okay, sundry accounts, we must remember, is that we don't have an account called sundry accounts. This is basically for irregular incomes or receipts that I don't have on an everyday basis, and that is then entered in the sundry column. Now I have received capital on the 1st of November, and I have received rent income. So I will have to post to those two accounts separately. I've got capital close. The rule says debit bank, credit all other accounts. So I'm going to credit capital. Now this did not happen on the 30th. If it's a column total, the transaction is then on the 30th, because it means it includes all the transactions for the month, and that is then the last day of the month is the 30th. But this capital entry was only one entry, and it happened on the 1st of November. Now I've already written the date 1st of November 2018, so I don't have to repeat it there. The contra entry is going to be bank. Why? Because the money that we received from the owner as a capital contribution was put into my bank account. All right. And this transaction was recorded in the CRJ, and the amount was 15,610 Rand. Okay, I'm done with that one. Now I have to do the rent income only. Now rent income, I think, is at the back here. No, it's not, it's in the middle. Rent income is an income account. Income's normally credit side. Okay, so credit. This happened on, let me just quickly check the date, on the 15th of November. Bank is my contra entry, because that was the name of the account that was debited. Transaction was recorded in the CRJ, and the amount was 2,500. And you know what? I'm done with posting all the accounts and all the amounts from the CRJ to the general ledger. Okay, and I can tick them off. The next thing that I have to do is I have to post the cash payments journal. Okay, cash payments journal, the rule from grade 9, we can remember, said credit bank and debit all other accounts. But now we know, as with the debtors and the discount allowed, we now have creditors and discount received, and this is also an exception to the rule. Why? Because discount received is an income, and in the cash payments journal I'm busy with payments or expenses, so this is not part of the rule. It can't form part of the rule. It's an exception to the rule. So this account, this discount received, is an income, and incomes normally have a credit entry, so this will also then be credited. So I'm going to put this with my rule there, and it's going to say discount received also will be credited. All other accounts will be debited. Once again, let's just quickly look at the sundry column. We had 2 entries there. On the 14th, we had 500 Rand for stationery, and on the 23rd, we had 7,800 towards equipment. So I'm going to have 2 separate entries there into those accounts. Okay, let's start. The rule says credit bank. I'm going to my bank account. The bank total is 51,000 Rand. This transaction was entered in the CPJ. It happened on the 30th of November because it's a column total, and therefore I'm going to include all the payments for the month. And in this case, I have to remember the contra entry is going to be total payments, because it includes all the payments that I have done throughout the month. The next thing that I have to do is, it says credit bank, debit all others, and the next column that I have is trading stock. So I'm going to go to the debit side of the trading stock account, and I will write down the 12,000 Rand that I paid towards trading stock. It happened on the 30th because it includes a couple of transactions during the month. Bank in this case is my contra entry because this is the name of the account that was credited, and the transaction was entered into the CPJ. Okay. The next transaction that I have to do, or next account that I have to enter in, is the creditors control account. Once again, let me remind you of the rule that says credit bank, debit all other accounts. I'm going to go to the debit side of the creditors control account, and this is on the 30th of November 2018, and it was in the CPJ, and the amount for creditors control was 12,500. Now let's quickly just talk about this, because payments that I made to creditors was 11,750, and I received a discount of 750. So in total, in total, the amount that I'm going to subtract from my creditors would be 12,500. The amount that was paid from my bank account and the discounts that we were allowed. I'm sorry about that. Okay, so if I look at this quickly, bank's done, trading stock is done, creditors control is done. Next thing I have to do is discount received. Now discount received, I have already decided it's going to be on the credit side. So on the credit side, discount received on the 30th, and the contra entry in this case is creditors control, right? Because this amount, discount received, and the bank amount together make up this amount in the creditors control. The transaction was entered into the CPJ, and the amount is 750 Rand. Okay, I'm done with that one. Easy enough. Next one would be wages. Now wages is an expense, so it's going to have a debit entry. Also the rule says credit bank, debit or other accounts. It's a column total, so it's going to be on the 30th. Bank is my contra entry because that's the name of the account that was credited. CPJ was the journal where it comes from, and the amount is 18,950. Okay, this leaves me only with the sundry column, and I know I've got 2 entries there. Now I'm close to the stationery account, so I'm going to do that one first. Credit bank, debit or other accounts. Stationery transaction was on the 14th. Bank is the contra entry, CPJ was the journal, and the amount was 500 Rand. Great. Next one is equipment. Equipment's also going to be on the debit side. The amount of equipment was 7,800. Transaction was recorded in the CPJ. Bank is my contra entry, and this transaction was on the 23rd. Why? Because it's in the sundry columns, and it was not a column total. It had a specific date. And I'm done with the CPJ. Okay. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to post the creditors journal to the general ledger. And this is fairly easy. The rule is straightforward. There's no exception to the rule. The rule says credit, creditors control, debit, all other accounts. Okay, why credit, creditors control? Because we are buying on credit, we are owing money, means it's a liability to us, and we know that liabilities increase on the credit side. Therefore, the amount of goods that I purchased throughout the month is going to go to the credit side, increasing my liabilities. Okay, so let's quickly follow the rule, and we say credit, creditors control. I'm at the creditors control. I'm going to credit. It's the last day of the month. It comes from the CJ. And the total amount of money that I spent with creditors, or actually did not spend, it's credit purchases. So the amount of debt that I accrued during the month was 21,000 Rand. This, I must know, is sundry purchases, meaning I have purchased a lot of stuff from various creditors. Okay, sundry purchases. So I've got my rule there. Rule number 1, or part 1 of the rule, says credit, creditors control, debit the other accounts. The next column that I have is trading stock. So I'm going to go to trading stock and I will debit trading stock. Once again, it's on the 30th. I don't have to write the date because it's still the 30th. It's only when the date changes that I have to write it down. The contra entry in this case is creditors control. Sorry for that. And it comes from the CJ, and the amount of trading stock that I bought was 15,675. Okay. Next thing that I purchased was stationery. So on the debit side of the stationery account, I'm going to write the amount 990 Rand. It comes from the CJ. It was on the 30th because it's a column total, and creditors control is my contra entry. That's the name of the account that was credited, and now I'm debiting stationery. Okay, next column that I have is equipment. Equipment will be debited. It's a column total, so it's going to be on the 30th. Creditors control is my contra entry, and it was recorded in the CG, the creditors journal, and the amount's 1,450. Now the last column that I have, let's quickly just do the tick thingy. Oh, I love this. We have posted all those columns. The last column that we have to do is the sundry column. Now there was only one entry in the sundry column, therefore I put this in brackets. It was for repairs, and it was on the 21st. So I'm going to go to my repairs account. Now repairs was not in the trial balance, so it means that we didn't have a balance or opening balance for the repairs account. This is the first entry towards repairs for this year that we are making. Therefore, I had to open up the repairs account. The first transaction, now the rule, let's quickly just remind ourselves about the rule. Credit, creditors control, debit all other accounts, so it's going to go to the debit side. The transaction took place on the 21st of November 2018. The contra entry is creditors control because it is the name of the account that was credited. This transaction was recorded in the CJ, and the amount was 2,885. Okay, and I'm done with my creditors journal. We have posted all these amounts to the general ledger. Next thing that I have to do is then post the creditors allowance journal. Now, creditors journal is when we purchase on credit. Creditors allowance journal is when we return goods that was purchased on credit. So if the rule for the creditors journal says credit, creditors control, debit all others, this is going to be exactly the opposite. And now it's going to say debit, creditors control, and credit all other accounts, because the opposite thing is happening here. So it's going to have the opposite effect, and therefore opposite entries into the general ledger. Okay, so I've got a creditors control, trading stock, stationery, luckily no equipment, and then sundry, which is also that one transaction, repairs. Okay, let's go to creditors control so that we can start with the posting. Creditors control, rule says debit creditors control. Now in this case you also have to remember this entry is going to say sundry returns, because we returned various goods to various creditors, stationery, trading stock, etc. This was recorded in the CAJ, and the total amount of returns was 1,505 Rand. Okay, quite important. Can you see that we have now posted various journals to the different accounts? How important it is to put your folio reference there. Therefore, the abbreviation for the journal where it comes from, so that I know if I have to go check up on this transaction, maybe it was entered incorrectly, then I need to go check in the C